I found out who my business partner really was in the 4 seconds it took a waiter to drop a tray. Not during the contract signing. Not during the handshake deals or the late-night calls where he told me I was the only person he trusted. 4 seconds, one crash, and I saw something I spent the next year trying to unsee. Let me back up. I'd met Daniel almost 2 years earlier, at a small business networking event I almost didn't attend. I was tired that night, running on coffee and the kind of low-grade burnout you convince yourself is just being busy. Daniel was different from everyone else in the room. Where other people pitched themselves, he asked questions. He remembered small details, my dog's name, the fact that I hated cilantro, the college I almost transferred out of. I remember thinking, this guy actually listens. That mattered to me more than I realized at the time. I'd spent years working with people who talked over me, who nodded along to conversations without absorbing a word. Daniel felt like a relief. Within 6 months, we were building a company together, nothing huge, a mid-sized consulting firm, but it was ours, built from nothing but late nights and a shared belief that we could do things differently. I trusted him completely. Not the cautious, let's see how this goes, kind of trust. The real kind. The kind where you stop double-checking invoices because you assume good faith. The kind where you introduce him to your family like he's already part of it. Looking back, I think what I trusted wasn't really him. It was the version of him I'd built in my head, polite, attentive, generous. And for a long time, I had no reason to question it, because he was polite and attentive and generous, to me. It was a Tuesday evening at a restaurant downtown, the kind of place with white tablecloths and soft lighting, where you go to close a deal instead of just eat dinner. Daniel and I were meeting a potential client, a woman named Priya who ran a logistics company. The conversation was going well. Daniel was in his element, charming, sharp, funny in a way that made people lean in. Then it happened. A young waiter, maybe 19 or 20, was clearing a nearby table when his tray tipped. Glasses shattered. A half-full water pitcher soaked the floor, and for a second, the whole restaurant seemed to pause and look. I watched the waiter's face go pale. He started apologizing immediately, hands shaking as he crouched to pick up the broken glass. And I watched Daniel. For exactly 4 seconds, I know because I counted them later, replaying the moment obsessively, his face changed. The warmth drained out of it. His jaw tightened. He didn't yell. He didn't even say anything cruel. He just looked at that kid with an expression I'd never seen him wear before. Something cold. Dismissive. Like the waiter had personally inconvenienced him in a way that mattered more than the boy's obvious embarrassment. Then, just as fast, it was gone. Daniel turned back to Priya with a smile and made a joke about occupational hazards, and the conversation picked right back up like nothing happened. Nobody else seemed to notice. Priya didn't. The waiter was too busy cleaning up to catch it. But I noticed. And it sat in my stomach like a stone for the rest of the dinner. I told myself it was nothing. Everyone has a flash of irritation now and then. I was tired, maybe reading into it. I went home that night and almost convinced myself I'd imagined the whole thing. But something about it stuck with me in a way I couldn't shake. Not because it was dramatic, it wasn't. Nobody got hurt, nothing was said. It was the smallness of it that unsettled me. The fact that it only showed up when Daniel thought it didn't matter. When there was nothing to gain from being kind. I started noticing things I'd overlooked before. The way he spoke to the office cleaning staff, polite, but distant, like they were furniture that happened to talk. The way he'd cut off a junior employee mid-sentence in meetings but never once interrupted a client. Small things. Things I'd filed away without examining because they didn't affect me directly. I remember thinking, I built 2 years of trust on the way this man treats me. not on the way he treats people who can't do anything for him. That distinction sat heavy in my chest for weeks. There's a concept psychologists sometimes talk about, the idea that character isn't revealed by how someone behaves when something is at stake, but by how they behave when nothing is. When there's no audience worth impressing, no outcome worth managing. I hadn't thought about it seriously before that night. I'd always judged people the way most of us do, by how they treated me, how they made me feel, whether the relationship worked in my favor. But that framework has a blind spot. It only measures how someone performs for the people they need something from. It says nothing about how they treat the people they don't. Once I started paying attention through that lens, I couldn't stop. I watched Daniel differently at every meeting, every dinner, every casual interaction with a stranger who had nothing to offer him. And the pattern held. He wasn't cruel, exactly. He was just conditional. Warmth that switched on and off depending on what you could do for him. The hardest part wasn't the discovery. It was sitting with what it meant about my own judgment. I'd prided myself on being a good reader of people. I noticed details, I asked questions, I thought I understood who I was working with. But I'd been reading a performance the whole time, and I hadn't even known there was a stage. I didn't confront Daniel. Not directly, not with an accusation. What would I even say? I saw your face for 4 seconds near a broken water pitcher. It would have sounded absurd out loud. But something in the way I worked with him changed. I started double-checking things I used to take on faith. I paid more attention to how he talked about people who weren't in the room. I stopped assuming the version of him I liked was the whole truth. Eventually, other things surfaced, small discrepancies in how credit got distributed, a pattern of taking sole recognition for shared work, decisions made without me that only made sense once I understood what he actually valued. None of it was catastrophic. It was just consistent. The dinner was never the proof. It was the moment I started looking for proof at all. We don't part ways dramatically. The partnership dissolved slowly, over the following year, in the quiet way most professional relationships end, fewer calls, more distance, eventually a formal separation that felt more like an exhale than a rupture. What stayed with me wasn't the business fallout. It was the realization that I'd been evaluating people my whole life using the wrong question. I used to ask, how does this person make me feel? Now I ask something different, how does this person treat someone who can't do anything for them? It's a small shift, but it changes what you see. It changes who you trust, and how quickly. Because the truth is, almost anyone can be generous to the people who matter to their success. That's not character. That's strategy dressed up as kindness. Real character shows up in the 4 seconds nobody's watching, with the waiter, the stranger, the person who will never write you a check or return a favor. I think about that night sometimes, not with anger, but with a strange kind of gratitude. Daniel never did anything to me directly. He never had to. He showed me exactly who he was in a moment he didn't think counted. I just happened to be paying attention. I wonder how many people I've misjudged the same way, by watching how they treated me, and never once watching how they treated everyone else. And I wonder, if someone were quietly watching me in an unguarded moment, what they would see. Maybe that's the real question worth sitting with. Not who do people show you they are, but who are they when they think no one's showing at all.